Welcome to another edition of the Hawk Off the Press podcast. I'm your host, Gazette Hawkeyes football reporter, John Steppe. I'm joined by my Gazette colleague, Jeff Linder, who covers Iowa women's basketball. Jeff, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, kind of big week here for Iowa women's basketball. Let's start off with Wednesday, a Purdue team. Purdue, not necessarily the last few years a powerhouse, but this seems to be a respectable Purdue team that Iowa is about to go up against.
Yeah, it's a respectable Purdue team, and when you go over to West Lafayette, you're going to have your hands full. Purdue's 9-5 this year, but they're 8-0 at home. They play good defense. They're giving up about 62 points a game. They'll be a much different beast over there than they would be if they played in Iowa City. Purdue's kind of been habitually a 500 team in the Big Ten the last 6-8 years, and looks to be about the same this year, but you sure can't overlook them over there tomorrow.
And for those wondering, as we're recording this, at least it is still in full blizzard mode. Sounds like the team got in before the storm.
They got in yesterday. They decided yesterday to beat the weather, and I think that was a smart choice. I don't think they'd have made it today. I think Bluter talked to the plane people, the airline people, and they said probably you're not going to get out on Tuesday, so they decided to beat the flakes and what is it, Winter Storm Finn or whatever they call this thing, and they made their way to West Lafayette yesterday, and probably it may have turned out to be a pretty good thing because they get a full practice over there today, which talking about that kind of different environment over there, that might have been a really good thing. And then they'll get a shoot around tomorrow, and then they've got 7:00 contest on Peacock.
And then one of the things that you were writing about from that is Gabby Marshall. Seems like maybe she has her shot again.
Maybe. We'll see. It was some pretty rough sledding. It really was just like last year. She was about 23%, I think, the first 22 games, and over 50% the last 15 or 16. And this year it's about the same, about 25% before Friday. She had four out of 7 over at Rutgers, so maybe that's going to kind of kickstart her. And if they get that part of their offense going too, they're going to be a really, really tough team to beat.
And then another big test this week on Saturday, number 3 Iowa playing host to number 14 Indiana. What are the things you're looking forward to seeing in that matchup?
Oh boy, can Iowa hold their own in the paint? Indiana's got a great one in Mackenzie Holmes. If Iowa can break even or come close to breaking even with Stolke and the other posts, Goodman, O'Grady, Edinger, whatever, that's a good sign. Indiana's a very good team. I think if Iowa is indeed the best team in the Big Ten, I think Indiana's probably a close number 2. And you got to remember, Indiana won the regular season title last year. They're the defending champs. I'm sure they're going to be hungry to come over here and compete with Iowa after the way the regular season finale ended up last year.
And then kind of a couple big picture questions here. Kind of how would you evaluate or kind of what do you make out of, I think it's 15-1 through these first 16 games. The one loss to Kansas State, but then they go back and beat Kansas State later. Kind of how would you evaluate these first couple months of the season?
I would say probably better than expected. The K-State loss at home was a little bit of an eye-opener, but that necessarily isn't a bad thing. I think it kind of brought them back down to earth after, the crossover at Kinnick and all the ballyhoo that follows Caitlin Clark everywhere. I think it kind of brought them back down to earth, and they've rattled off 12 wins in a row since then. So, I would say at least as good or maybe even better than thought, especially with the loss of Monica Sanano.
And then as you're kind of looking across the Big Ten, obviously you're mentioning Indiana, Ohio State also ranked. Is there a 1 or 2 Big Ten teams that you think Iowa fans should be particularly wary of that could be particularly a thorn in Iowa's side, kind of going down the road? Obviously, not as top heavy of a conference as it was a year ago.
Yeah. You can't ever overlook Maryland. Iowa goes to Maryland on February 3rd. That's going to be a really tough one. Nebraska, they go to Nebraska later this year. I think they play them home and away. So that's another good team. And games like this one against Purdue, could be something that could trip them up. And those are the games that if they're going to win a Big Ten championship, they've got to find a way to win. And I think Wednesday they will.
And then you wrote a great feature last week. I think it was last week. The days tend to blur together
Yeah,
on Kate Martin. If you haven't read Jeff's work yet on that, highly recommend it.
thanks.
So want to ask you a little bit about that. Obviously, there's no stat for leadership, but how much has she really contributed to this team in some of those not on the box score ways?
Well, she's always done that. She's always been guard one of the toughest players on the other team. We talk about the leadership and the intangibles and all that stuff, but some of the stuff you can measure this year, she stepped up in, and one of those things is scoring. She's averaging, I think she was kind of a 7 point per game person each of the last 3 years. This year she's up over 11 out of necessity. She's probably been their other than Clark, probably their most consistent offensive threat, along with Hannah Stolke.
And then that's a great segue to my next question. I was asked next about Stelke in terms of kind of year one to year two. How have you seen her
Yeah.
grow, and where do you still see room for improvement from her?
Well, her free throw shooting's gotten better. It's regressed a little bit the last 2 or 3 games, but that has had before that period had been better. Um, I still think she's playing out of position when they've got her at the five, and I think that Iowa's kind of considered her the best five, but I think she's a better four, and I think next year that's kind of probably where she'll go back with the Hayden girl coming in. But um, she runs the floor great. She's a good rebounder, good defender. Hasn't Doesn't seem to have been in as much foul trouble this year, which has been a good sign. So, yeah, she's gotten better. I think she's borderline first team, second team, all Big Ten kind of player. And if that's the case, I think she's on a real trajectory to be, probably Iowa's next big star.
Now, I think this is probably year number four, if I'm doing my math right, of you covering Clark. What's kind of different about senior year Clark versus previous year Clarks as somebody who's been covering them up close?
Oh boy. A week or two ago, I'd have said less turnovers, but she's kind of been back on the turnover train here a little bit the last 2 or 3 games. Um, I just think there's more maturity there. Uh, there's with her, there's always going to be distraction. Now she's got a cereal named after her. The is she going to stay or is she going to go? Question's going to remain with her until she answers it. And I still don't have any idea what direction's that heading. But I think she is able to kind of tune that stuff out. And as much as she loves, doing the autographs and the pictures and stuff like that after games, that has to take a toll. But I think she's done a really good job of, when during those 40 minutes, I think between the lines, she's been really, really focused in.
And then if you had to pick one key for Iowa to do what they've been setting out to do and really accomplish those goals that they kind of, got a bunch of last year, but then came up short on one. What's kind of that big key that you see for these next 3 months?
Well, for one thing, they've got to stay healthy, especially Clark. If something would happen to her, that's catastrophic, obviously. They just got to be themselves. They've got to shoot 45% or more in a game. And if they do that, I think they're going to be a really tough team to beat. Their defense has gotten a little better, I think, but they're able to outscore whoever they play. And if they don't have the subpar shooting game, I think they'll be fine.
And then if you had obviously a lot of season left to go, but if you had to make a prediction right now, where do you see this team finishing in terms of Big Ten and then in terms of postseason?
Um, well, at the beginning of the season, I said 25-5, which included 14-4 in the Big Ten. After the non-conference, after seeing them a lot, I upgraded it to 27-3 and 16-2 in the Big Ten, winning the Big Ten. Um, I still think they're the best team. As far NCAA, oh, their ceiling is, you know, as high as anybody's. But you know, it's a one game deal. It's not a best of 5 series, best of 7 series, whatever. It's one and done. Right now I'll say Elite Eight. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me. So I think some fans would be disappointed by not getting
Oh yeah,
back to the Final
yeah,
Four,
and
but
I'm sure they'd be disappointed with that. And a lot of it's about matchups. Who could they play in Iowa City? Who would they play in either Portland or Albany? Final Four is certainly a possibility. Getting beat in the second round is a possibility, but I think anywhere from round of 32 to maybe a national championship, none of that would surprise me.
and I think sometimes it's easy for people to forget just how hard it is to get into
Yeah,
those late rounds. You have to beat some really quality teams, and
absolutely. And it
that's no
starts in the
easy
second
feat.
round. And you look at Indiana last year. I thought Indiana was a great basketball team. I think they are again this year. They got beat in the second round. Stanford got beat early. And a lot of, some of those other games kind of paved the way to make Iowa's road a little bit easier last year. So, um, it's cliche, but it's a crapshoot, and it's good that the women's game has gotten to that point. Kind of where the men's game has always been. That anything can happen pretty early.
And then we've been seeing it seems like sell out, well, really a whole season sold out. How much have you seen that kind of influence the Carver environment as someone who's covered this team when it
Yeah,
wasn't necessarily the hot ticket in town?
yeah. I think it was it early last year, maybe late 2 years ago that they finally started putting those curtains up. I mean, the arena was the home side, I guess. Maybe it's the away side. I guess it'd be the side looking away from when you're on TV. Those curtains were up and or down, I should say, and the capacity was probably 8 to 10,000. Now, you got to spend $200 or $300 per ticket just to get one on StubHub or Vivid Seats or whatever. And it's the biggest show in town. It's supplanted the men's basketball is the biggest show in town, at least for now. And it's same deal on the road. Rutgers, which is a subpar Big Ten team right now, they sold out. I think Purdue sold out, and I'm not sure that there are going to be any games left that there are going to be any walk up seats.
Wow. That's pretty remarkable to think about
Yeah,
compared to what things were a couple of years ago.
right. And will this continue after Clark's gone? Probably not. If they're still entertaining and still winning, I think they'll still have maybe 5-digit crowds from time to time, but a lot of it's Clark and a lot of it's the supporting cast as well.
Well, Jeff, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thanks to our listeners for tuning into another episode. Until next time, we will talk Hawks later.